Hello. It is that wonderful time of year again when I get to make that video that has the absolute worst performance compared to how much work I put into it. That's right, it's my own personal Oscars 2024 edition.
Gaming Cookie Guy
Entertainment.
So if you are watching this, thank you very much. This video has quite literally been over a year in the making, with over 100 movies watched last year and 42 of those making the lists in some capacity. I will say right up front that these are just the movies that I was able to go out and see in 2024, so you won't see movies like The Brutalist because I had no way to watch it before its January wide release. And as always, of course, these are all just my opinion and also just the movies that I was able to go out and see. So if you have your own thoughts on any of these or anything that I wasn't able to watch, please let me know in the comments below. But like they say, opinions are kind of like buttholes. Everyone's got one and they all stink. So with that image just freshly in mind, let's talk about all the movies and performances that I loved from 2024. And as always, I'd like to start off with my favorite performance by an actress in a supporting role, starting off with some honorable mentions for performances that just missed the cut. Those are Catherine Malin Kupfer in Ghostlight, Rachel Sennott in Saturday Night, and Ariana Grande in Wicked. And now for my nominees in no particular order. First up is Tilda Swinton in Problemista. I feel like I've talked about Problemista a lot over the past year, and a lot of that is just off of the back of Tilda Swinton's performance here as the manic employer of Julio Torres's Alejandro. She plays this character that is at the same time easy to hate, but is still able to retain this human core and center that I think is really key, not just to her character paying off, but to the entire movie paying off, which I think it does in large part thanks to Swinton. My next nominee is Joan Chen in the movie Dee Dee. Joan Chen, of course, plays the mother of the titular Dee Dee in this coming-of-age movie. Speaking of this very outlandish performance from Tilda Swinton, this is an extremely grounded one from Joan Chen, to the point where you could easily forget, I could easily forget, that you're watching two actors and not just a mother and son interacting. Next up is Jack Haven in I Saw the TV Glow. Now, I'm really sorry. I genuinely apologize. I know this probably is not the best category for them since they are non-binary, but I didn't want to exclude them from my nominations just because I didn't have a category that best fit them. So I hope there's no offense by putting Jack Haven here. And I didn't want to exclude this performance because it was really good. They're a great foil in this movie for our protagonist, Owen. They lead Owen through this movie and they try and deal with their own story of growth as well. I feel like I have to apologize for two nominees in a row now because my fourth nominee is Zoe Saldana in Emilia Perez. And I know this movie has probably no business being nominated for as many Oscars as it has been nominated for, but I would argue that they at least got this nomination right because I think Zoe Saldana is easily the standout of this movie, playing arguably the lead character as the lawyer turned Emilia Perez's right-hand man. Saldana acts and sings and dances her tail off in this movie as an example of being something to latch onto, something to enjoy, even if the movie as a whole isn't something that was my favorite. My final supporting actress nominee is Zendaya in Dune Part 2. What a great run Zendaya is having, from Spider-Man to Euphoria to Challengers to Dune. As the freedom fighter Chani, she is seemingly unstoppable in real life and in this movie. In Dune, she elevates Chani from like what could be a bland love interest like she was in the David Lynch film to like a real person who is torn between this love she has for this person she found and the love she has for her people. And yet she always stays true to herself, making her a great static force in this grand epic movie. And here we go. Drum roll. This is my first winner of the video. My favorite performance by a supporting actress this year was Zendaya in Dune Part 2.
He's dead. His vital signs are so low they can't be detected. But he's alive.
What did you do to him?
No, not that. Why would he do that? Why would you do that? Chani, his body is fighting the poison and he needs your help.
You do it. You did this to him. You did this to your own son. You do it. Fix it yourself.
Chani, you might not believe in the prophecy, but you're a part of it.
You're the poison. You and your lies. Why would you do this?
One gender swap later means we have my nominees for my favorite performance by an actor in a supporting role, with honorable mentions to Samuel L. Jackson in The Piano Lesson, Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2, and Austin Butler in Dune Part 2. First up for nominees is Chris Hemsworth in Furiosa for his performance as the bumbling yet villainous Dementus. And spoiler alert, he does not end up winning my favorite performance here, but for a very large part of the year, he was at the top of the heap, and you could tell he just had a great time playing this character. And if later I find out he actually hated playing Dementus, maybe I should have given him this top spot, because he fooled me. My next nominee is Stanley Tucci in Conclave, but let's be real, the Tucci could be in just about anything, and I would try to find a reason to nominate him. In this, he plays the ambitious and progressive cardinal in the midst of an election for Pope, and every scene he is in is great, as we never really know where his character's gonna go. He's kind of all over the place, and he has his own little arc, and he's just fun every time he comes up on screen. My third nominee is probably the one I didn't see coming. This wasn't on my radar at all, and yet it is one of the two nominations I share with the Oscars in this category. It is Yura Borisov in Anora. Now, I wasn't as blown away with Anora as a whole like other people were. I thought it was good. I just didn't think it was like the absolute best movie I saw last year. But what didn't disappoint was Borisov. In this, he plays the henchman Igor, or at least in any other movie, that's all he would have been. He would have been relegated to that very typical role that we've seen a dozen times. And yet in Anora, he's able to explore it on such a deeper, more personal level that by the end of the movie, he is one of the most important characters. And I think there is a kind of magic in that. My penultimate nominee in this category is another one that wasn't even close to being on my radar going in. I'd never heard of this actor. It is Clarence Macklin in Sing Sing. Now, what I didn't realize about Macklin until the credits were rolling and until I was looking deeper into the movie was that he's actually playing a version of himself. But if you think that would in some way disqualify him, like make it easier, like, oh, you're just playing yourself, you're not even playing a character, I don't know, like, try acting like yourself. Just imagine what that would be like. Someone says, hey, act natural. Like, I almost think that's harder to do. And my final nominee for my favorite supporting actor performance is the other Oscar nominee, and actually the Oscar frontrunner right now. It is Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain, written by Jesse Eisenberg. Culkin plays Benji, a man touring Poland, reflecting on the past while trying to figure out his own path ahead. And the only real bad thing I can say about this performance is that I wanted even more of it. When this movie was over and the credits were rolling, I just wanted to check in with Benji and see how he was doing. I want to see what he's doing outside the world of this movie. And with that in mind, Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain is my winner. He is my favorite performance by an actor in a supporting role.
Look at her.
Who?
That woman, Marcia. She's walking alone. We should go talk to her.
We just met her.
Yeah, but she's got this, like, deep sadness behind her eyes, you know?
She does?
Yeah, you didn't notice that?
During the introductions? No.
I think we should check on her.
Benji, maybe she wants to be alone.
Sorry. No one wants to be alone, Dave. Okay, I'm gonna check it out. Hey.
Now I'm going to take a break from the actors and talk about some non-acting categories. Now, in years past, similar to what I just did with all the actors, I would take a moment to say a little blurb about all my nominees. In an effort to cut some runtime off this video, I'm only going to be talking about my winner, but if you're at all curious about any of my picks, please ask me about them. I will be more than happy to talk about any of these movies. First of these is a category I call my favorite visuals, bearing in mind I don't know anything about cinematography, so really the only criteria to making this list is seeing the movie and my brain going, hey, that looks really cool. So here are my honorable mentions for my favorite visuals. They are Joker, Folie à Deux, Problemista, and Alien Romulus. And here are my nominees. Robot Dreams with art direction by Jose Luis Agreda. The Wild Robot with cinematography by Chris Stover. Wicked with cinematography by Alice Brooks and choreography by Christopher Scott. Dune Part 2 with cinematography by Greg Fraser. And Musica with cinematography by Shane Hurlbut. Now, this call came really down to the wire. I was between a couple great films in this category, but in the end, I had to give it to the movie that I thought had the single most impressive looking sequence that I saw all year, that being Wicked. The musical sequences in this movie just floored me. Absolutely stunning, blew me away. I have never seen anything like that, except for maybe In the Heights, which, yeah, Christopher Scott also choreographed. So I'm surprised, but I really shouldn't be surprised. I know the colors are a bit muted, but just like watch the Ozdust Ball scene, watch the Emerald City scene, even those horrible, horrifying, nightmare fuel-inducing monkeys look good in their own right. Now, even though this movie won on the back of those musical scenes, I can't really play a clip from any of those, but I promise I will try and find something that is almost as impressive to play right now. Now, my next category is one that I just straight up cannot play a clip after at all because it is my nomination for my favorite song/musical performance in a movie. And my criteria for this is that I'm only allowing one song per movie, but that song doesn't necessarily have to be totally original for the movie as long as the performance is unique to the movie. I hope that made any sense. My honorable mentions for favorite song are Double Life from Despicable Me 4, Get Lost from Moana 2, and Another Season from I Saw the TV Glow. And my nominees are Someone Gets Hurt, performed by Renee Rapp from Mean Girls, It Ain't Me, Babe, performed by Timothy Chalamet and Monica Barbaro from A Complete Unknown, We Go Together, as performed by Kagiso Lediga and the cast of Mufasa the Lion King from Mufasa the Lion King, True Love Will Find You in the End, as performed by Joaquin Phoenix from Joker, Folie à Deux, and Dancing Through Life, as performed by Jonathan Bailey and the cast of Wicked from Wicked. And it really should come as no surprise that my favorite song would come from Wicked. But why specifically Dancing Through Life? Well, if you recall, this movie just won in my favorite visuals category because of some truly excellent cinematography and direction. And the song I had in mind when picking that as my winner was Dancing Through Life. And to be clear, the song by itself, Dancing Through Life, probably not even top 3 in the movie, but this whole sequence, the music, the dancing, how long it goes, the story behind it, everything worked in tandem to make this one of my favorite scenes of the entire year. And this is where I play clip, but I can't play clip. So we're going to move right on to the last of what I'm going to call my technical categories. Here we have my favorite story/writing. This is something that I either thought had a unique story to tell or something that I thought had impressive dialogues. In a lot of cases, in the winners' cases, it's both. And there were some really strong nominees this year. My honorable mentions are Drive Away Dolls, Heretic, and Saturday Night. And my nominees for writing and story are Conclave, written by Peter Strawn, Challengers, written by Justin Kuritzkis, I Saw the TV Glow, written by Jane Schoenbrunn, Problemista, written by Julio Torres, and A Real Pain, written by Jesse Eisenberg. And my winner for my favorite story is I Saw the TV Glow, written by Jane Schoenbrunn. This is a movie that has stayed with me all throughout the year from the moment I watched it. That last scene is kind of haunting in that way. I think what impresses me the most about I Saw the TV Glow is it's telling a story that is clearly an allegory to the writer's own life. And yet, even though it is written with that specific lens, that specific worldview in mind. I think this story feels so universal, and it forces the viewer to think about what they just watched, to peel back the layers of the movie and the layers of themselves, and to decide how they feel about what they just watched. But also, it's just a cool story, even if you don't want to do all that introspection.
Master, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Charlie. Happy birthday. You need to help me!
Finally, the last category that I'm presenting in this abbreviated format is a category that I'm doing for the first time because I finally watched enough of these to make it its own category. These are my nominees for my favorite documentary. The nominees are The Remarkable Life of Evelyn, directed by Benjamin Ree; Piece by Piece, directed by Morgan Neville; The Greatest Night in Pop, directed by Bao Nguyen; Will and Harper, directed by Josh Greenbaum; and Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, directed by Peter Edgey. And my favorite documentary of 2024 was The Remarkable Life of Evelyn, directed by Benjamin Ree. And this should come as no surprise if you watched my top 10 movies of 2024 video. If you haven't, then spoilers for that. Not only was Evelyn my favorite documentary of last year, it was my favorite movie flat out. This documentary is about a man who died before his story could even really be told, and in some ways even really begin. And if you have any interest at all in gaming culture, in video games, in that community, if you're not involved in it and you just are curious what it's all about, I highly recommend this documentary. Even if you have no interest in any of that and you just want to watch a compelling human story, please watch this documentary. Take the time. It's the best thing I watched all year.
Before Mats passed away, he left behind his password for us. I think this was deliberate. It was obviously something he had hoped we would find. Because behind that password was a world we knew absolutely nothing about.
All right, now we're going back to the full breakdowns. My next category is one that I like to do, but the Oscars don't. These are my nominees for my favorite voice acting and or motion capture performance, starting with my honorable mentions. Pedro Pascal in The Wild Robot, Ali E. Cravalho in Moana 2, Owen Teague in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I'm going to kick off my first nominee by telling you just straight up how biased I am because I love this actor in a completely different project. This is Peter Macon as Raka in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Obviously, I do think he belongs on this list, but maybe he wouldn't be as high up on it if I didn't also love his performance as Lieutenant Commander Bortus in The Orville. I will say Raka is just the perfect character for him to play, helping set our protagonist Noah on his journey. I only wish we got to spend more time with him in this movie. My next nominee is one that from the moment I heard the casting decision, I thought I was going to hate it, and yet here it is. It made it all the way to my top 5. It is Brian Tyree Henry as D16 and Megatron in Transformers 1. Now, I wasn't against this casting because I dislike Brian Tyree Henry at all. In fact, I think I've liked him in just about everything I have seen, but I in no way thought he would be the right fit for Megatron. And the trailers with their kid-friendly tone, the jokes, the cut-ups, the dumb shots, they only reinforced that. But dang, I was proven so wrong by the end of this movie. Yes, he is quippy at the beginning as D16, but as he develops into Megatron, Brian Tyree Henry absolutely brings it. Like, I did not know he had this in him, and my streak of liking his performances doesn't end with this movie. In fact, it only grows. I am so happy to be proven so wrong. My next two nominees, I'll announce at the same time because they're in the same movie. It is Maya Hawke as Anxiety and Kensington Tallman as Riley in Pixar's Inside Out 2. This is a fun pairing, the two of them, because to me they're the two focus characters of the movie. Like, yes, Joy is technically our protagonist, our main character, I guess, but she's just so much less interesting to me than these two. Like, Riley especially felt like less of a character in the first movie. She was more like the setting, the plot, a force that was setting our characters into motion. In this movie, she is more of her own character, and I think a lot of that is owed to Tallman's performance, able to convey these more complex emotions. And speaking of those complex emotions, we have Maya Hawke playing the main antagonist of this movie while always remaining sympathetic. And the journey of both of these characters really learning to live with each other is what makes this movie so special and maybe even better than the first one, in my opinion. And my fifth and final nominee in this category is Kagiso Lediga as the young Rafiki in Mufasa, The Lion King. He may be on this list just because of how much I think he outshined his co-stars. I don't know what exactly it was that bumped me on the other performances. Like, they weren't bad or upsetting in any way, but they weren't them. And when I heard Lediga's performance as Rafiki, he was the only one where I thought, wow, that is Rafiki. And so my winner for my favorite voice acting and motion capture performance, I told you right at the beginning, I'm biased. It's going to Peter Macon in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Elders of my village, they made the law. That is everything.
That is not everything. Long before your elders, it was Caesar who taught us what it means to be ape. He was our leader, our lawgiver. Apes together, strong. Ape shall not kill ape. We, the order of Caesar, follow his words to this day.
And staying on the subject of animation for just a little while longer, I'd like to talk about my nominees for my favorite animated movie, which will be one of the only categories that I do talk about in reverse order from 5 to 1. But let's start with my honorable mentions from 8 to 6. We have Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, directed by Kenji Kamiyama, Mufasa, The Lion King, directed by Barry Jenkins, and Moana 2, directed by David G. Derrick Jr., Jason Hand, and Dana Ledoux Miller. And so my fifth favorite animated movie of the year was Look Back, directed by Kiyotaka Oshiyama. Look Back is about a lot of things, but it is told in a very concise way. I mean, this movie isn't even a full hour long, so it kind of has to get its point across quickly. But I think it does that, and I think it achieves that intangible thing of getting inside your head and staying there and being there long after the credits roll, and that only gets amplified as you learn about the real-life story behind this movie. Now, I'm being vague, so apologies, but that's because I'm assuming this is a movie not most people have seen, so check it out. Get the full experience for yourself. At number 4 is Transformers 1, directed by Josh Cooley. This movie serves as an origin story for the likes of Optimus Prime and the Autobots and Megatron for the Decepticons. And wow, did the trailers for this movie do it absolutely no favors. I mean, I almost didn't go see the movie based on the marketing. Like, it was looking like it was going to be another Super Mario Brothers movie situation. Like, it's a recognizable IP, you have celebrity voice cast, like a fine movie, but decidedly for a younger audience. But yeah, take my surprise at Brian Tyree Henry's performance and apply that to the movie as a whole. Like, yes, you have some of the trailer moments made for kids, but you also have a lot in there that I probably wouldn't show a 5-year-old. And I'm not saying that inherently makes the movie better. Like, seeing robot gore for the sake of robot gore, putting that in there is not what makes a movie great, but treating these characters and treating this world seriously, that is what elevates this from like a good kids movie to a good movie. At number 3, and just barely not making it to number 2, is Inside Out 2, directed by Kelsey Mann. This movie is a pretty safe, cut and dry plot, like exactly what you would have expected from an Inside Out 2. It's following Riley from the first movie as she grows up and begins to grapple with some more complicated emotions like anxiety. Now, I don't know what exactly it was about the first Inside Out movie, but I just wasn't the biggest fan of it. I guess I just didn't get it. I either didn't relate to the situation or I didn't relate to the characters. And I don't know what it says about me, but with Inside Out 2, I get it. I see what the hype was about. Finishing as my second favorite animated movie of the year, it is Robot Dreams, directed by Pablo Berger. In this movie, a lonely dog gets a companion robot, and it follows their friendship even as the two are unfortunately separated and try to work their way back to each other. Now, this movie is entirely dialogueless, but that's not used as a gimmick. It's not used as something flashy just for the marketing and just for animation heads to lose their mind over. No, the animation's so good that you don't need dialogue. You get everything on the screen right there for you. And it's a beautiful looking image. A picture's worth 1,000 words, as they say. And even as emotional as Inside Out 2 was with dialogue, this movie was somehow wordlessly able to cut to something even a little bit deeper inside of me, which is why it clinched this second spot. In any year, this next movie probably gets nominated, and that's The Wild Robot, directed by Chris Sanders. Hey, another movie about robots. I really hope this isn't some like mass AI propaganda scheme. This movie follows Rosam 5, I think she is, as voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, as she crash lands on a desolate island full of wild animals and is kind of roped into raising a little duckling, a runt of the litter. On top of looking truly second to none, this movie has such a beautiful story focused around the found family trope, and I am kind of a sucker for anything like that. I think this was just the best, most well-rounded animated movie of the year. It's my pick for my favorite.
I don't know what I'm doing, and I have to. I have to because he's relying on me. Oh.
What task could possibly overwhelm the Alpha 113? The Alpha 113 processor represents the fusion of all human knowledge with the most powerful reasoning device ever developed by humankind.
I have a kid.
Okay.
And now to kick off the big final 3 categories of the video, here are my nominees for my favorite performance by an actress in a leading role. My honorable mentions are Anya Taylor-Joy in Furiosa, A Mad Max Saga, Mikey Madison in Anora, and Lady Gaga in Joker Folie à Deux. And we're back to no particular order here. My nominees are starting with Zendaya in Challengers. Zendaya finds herself once again on my favorite of the year list, fresh off of her win for Dune Part 2. But as much as I liked her performance, I loved her performance in Dune Part 2 as Chani, the freedom fighter, I almost think she's better in Challengers as Tashi, the master manipulator. My next nominee is Florence Pugh in We Live in Time. We Live in Time is a strange movie for me to find on this list because I simultaneously was disappointed by the movie while also loving it, kind of. And I think that has everything to do with the lead actors. Like, you put any other pair of actor and actress in this movie, and I think it just kind of falls apart. But Florence Pugh kept me invested in the story as it was chopped up and presented to us. And it really did become her story by the end, which is another surprise. I wasn't expecting that, and it's something I liked about the film. Next up is one of, if not my absolute favorite working actress. You may remember her from her appearance on my list last year. It is Emma Stone in Kinds of Kindness. And yeah, she was on here last year for a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. Surprise, surprise, another Yorgos Lanthimos movie, another appearance on my list in this anthology movie. Of course, the anthology nature of it did make it kind of difficult for me to place her on the list because it's like a collection of 3 short films rather than one feature. I ended up putting her on here, even though she's barely in part 1. I think she makes up for that in part 2, and then more than makes up for that in part 3, where I think she shines the most. And basically, as long as Emma Stone is in a half-decent feature-length movie, like, expect me to just reserve this spot for her. My 4th nominee is an actress who's really won me over in recent years. It is Kristen Stewart in the movie Love Lies Bleeding. So I make these lists like throughout the year. I work on it throughout the year. I don't just make it all at the last minute. And so as movies come out, I add people. As I think about them more, I change up the order. And so kind of like the real life Oscars, it tends to be an advantage to come out later in the year just because you're fresher in my mind. And yet Love Lies Bleeding is a movie that came out back in March, and Kristen Stewart has stayed as one of my top 5 favorite performances as Lou in this movie throughout the entire year. It's hard to talk about her role in this movie without completely spoiling it. I will just say she is more than meets the eye. And this is not a movie that I typically would have gone to see, but I'm glad I did because it's one that has left a lasting impression, and Stewart's performance is central to that. And my final nominee in this category is Cynthia Erivo in Wicked. And as far as expectations go, I was expecting to like Wicked, but based on the trailers, based on the marketing, based on all the promotional material I was seeing, I was not really expecting to like Erivo's performance as Elphaba. So she was really working from a deficit. She had a lot of ground to make up, and boy, did she. Like, by vocal chops alone, she could have found her way onto this list, but I thought she did a more than passable, a great job outside of the musical sequences, even if they were a bit one note, pun intended. And my pick for my favorite performance by an actress in a leading role is, once again, Zendaya in Challengers.
We can stay here. We can just be rich people. That's all you think you can handle. We can travel. We can do the foundation full time. Or you can keep being a tennis player. Which is what you are. Still. What do you want?
And on the flip side, that brings us to my nominees for my favorite performance by an actor in a leading role. My honorable mentions are Hugh Grant in Heretic, Joaquin Phoenix in Joker Folie à Deux, and Julio Torres in Problemista. And my nominees are Timothée Chalamet. No, not as Bob Dylan in A Complete Unknown, the role he was Oscar nominated for, but as Paul Atreides in Dune Part 2. Like, he was a great Bob Dylan, but this is Paul Muad'Dib Atreides we're talking about here. I am so sorry if you weren't like the biggest fan of Dune and you're just listening to me talk on and on about it. But believe me and hear me out when I say that this was my favorite character arc of the whole year. This was my favorite character arc in a while. Timothée Chalamet as Paul. I can't even explain how well he portrays a man who is being ripped against the course of destiny. He is raging against the riptide until he finally leans into it and he becomes exactly what he feared he would become. He becomes something entirely new. For my second nomination, I'm going to cheat. And even though I say it's cheating, I've done it literally every year, so I guess it's par for the course. But I couldn't separate these two actors and their performances in my mind. So they will be sharing one slot on my list, and you'll find it fitting if you've seen the movie. This joint nomination goes to Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor for Challengers. Now, Challengers is sometimes unfairly labeled as the threesome movie, the sexy tennis movie. And that's a really reductive way to look at this movie. But it's at least on the surface not entirely wrong. Like, it's wrong for the reasons people think, but it's not wrong in that This entire movie is about a relationship between the three central characters, and it is about how this relationship evolves over time. So again, based off the movie, I think it's more than fitting for this to be a shared nomination. My third nominee in this category is Gabriel LaBelle as Lorne Michaels in Saturday Night. Now, I'm not a huge fan of just giving away nominations just because somebody played somebody who really existed. Like, for example, Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan in A Complete Unknown. Like, a lot of those performances are good, but they're good impressions, and sometimes they take me out of the movie. I say that because I want to be clear, Gabriel LaBelle is not on this list because he did like such an amazing Lorne Michaels performance. Like, whoa, that was Lorne Michaels. I couldn't tell the difference between them two. No, he's on this list because he's carrying this movie. This was such a kinetic, frenetic movie that moved a mile a minute, and Gabriel LaBelle was the touchstone throughout the entire thing. He's the character we kept coming back to check on and see, hey, how is this all going? How is this all going to turn out? And I love how it turned out. My penultimate nominee is Ralph Fiennes in Conclave. And what a treasure Fiennes is, and what a treasure the movie Conclave is. It is just an airtight story with excellent acting through and through. Like, it's the kind of movie that seems impossible to make, and yet you watch it and you go, why can't anyone else make movies like this anymore? If for no other reason, watch this movie to watch Father Lawrence just stun a room of cardinals with a moving speech about the power of doubt. And then after you're done watching that, stay for the rest of the movie because he's great in the rest of it too. And finally, this is, of course, my DEI nominee. That's a joke. I'm joking because genuinely, this is one of the best performances of the year. I'll say it now. It's my favorite performance of the year, period. It is Colman Domingo in Sing Sing. In this movie, Domingo plays someone who was incarcerated for a crime he didn't commit and yet finds himself in the prison's theater program. And it is just unreal how good Domingo is in this movie. Like, I'm glad he got nominated for the Oscar, but how is he not the front runner for the Oscar? From the opening shot, I knew this would be something so special, so impressive, the way he is able to switch from these grand Shakespearean monologues to the regular everyday dialogue in the prison. The range, the highs, the lows, the heartbreak. Colman Domingo does it all in Sing Sing.
It's been a program that was established to help the population with management skills, and it's turned into something a bit more, wonderful, because it helps people get more in touch with their feelings and able to process and actually move through and truly get some rehabilitation.
So are you acting at all during this interview?
Absolutely not. I truly hope that you can understand that I've been very sincere. I know how meaningful this is. I would never, actually that's not the intention of acting. Acting is just a, process.
I read about the program. It's a good program.
And as we do every year, we have reached the final category, my favorite live action movie of 2024. But unlike other years, I have actually already made a video talking about not just my top 5 favorites, but my top 10 favorites. So I'm just going to link that in the description so you can get my thoughts. I will still say my nominees and the winner, though. At number 5 is Deadpool and Wolverine, directed by Shawn Levy. At number 4 is A Real Pain, directed by Jesse Eisenberg. At number 3 is I Saw the TV Glow, directed by Jane Schoenbrunn. At number 2 is Wicked, directed by John M. Chu. And at number 1, my favorite movie, my favorite live action movie of 2024, it's Dune Part 2, directed by Denis Villeneuve.
Lukács vagy, Kalakash. Uzulta bitnair kevi Barta wati. Jura hakari imasneria kala cheske obit. Harda house. O erle chausi jura ha abzir sihi secure tu femni. Dune.
You sound okay? So congrats to Dune on being my pick for my favorite movie. Here's some stats to close out this year's show. Like I mentioned up top, there were 102 total movies eligible for this year's video. 33 of them got at least one official nomination, and that expands to 42 movies total if you include honorable mentions. The movies with the most nominations at 4 apiece were Wicked and Dune Part 2, which makes sense. Those were my two favorite movies of the year. They were also the only two movies to get multiple wins, with each of them earning 2. There were 11 categories total, which means 9 different movies took home a top prize. The movie to have the most honorable mentions without getting a single nomination was Moana 2 with 3 honorable mentions. Maybe Moana 3 will have better luck getting on the podium. And the movie with the most nominations without getting a win were Conclave and Inside Out 2, both with 3 nominations each. That makes the big winners of 2024 Wicked and Dune Part 2, but the real MVP, by my metrics, has got to be Zendaya, with not only 2 major acting nominations, but a full sweep of her categories. She seems fully unstoppable, and I even hear she's been cast to play Felicia in Shrek 5, and somehow that is not a joke. So yeah, watch her win Best Voice Acting then too. And yeah, that is it. That is my show, and that was 2024. If you have stuck around for this whole video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have some new movies added to your watch list. I hope I've convinced you to watch at least one of those. And if you do give them a chance, I hope you enjoy them as much as I did. See you next time.